Hey guys, 7th here. I guess everybody wants to know what I felt about E3. Lord knows I'm getting enough tweets and messages about it, so let's have at it. Now, right up front, I'll say from the beginning, Microsoft did have a much better show than they have the last few. But they still lost. Now the way I calculated this is pretty simple. Who showed the most games? Now, because of the way that Nintendo is doing things these days, I've had to do that a little bit differently. Used to, I would strictly just watch the show, count it down, and that was it. Because of the way Nintendo does things now, with posting the stuff that they want people to see the most in their main clip, which is usually around 45 minutes or less, and then spend the next 3 days eking out their little trailer videos, which includes a bunch of stuff that wasn't shown in the first presentation. To be fair to everybody, I now have to cover not just what was shown in the press conference, but all the additional trailers for stuff after the fact. Sony showed a total of 61 games. 23 of those were indie titles. Of the 61 games in total, 24 of them were exclusive, and of those 24, 18 were exclusive to the PlayStation 4. The rest of them were exclusive for the Vita or the PS3. Next up, Microsoft. Microsoft showed a total of 43 games. 23 of those were indie titles. You hear that, Microsoft fanboys? Only one less indie title shown than Sony. So all this Sony Indie Station crap, you can shove it up your ass. Microsoft has been touting the games on Xbox Live since the 360 days, and so have you guys, holding some of them over our heads. Hey, you're not getting these indie titles, you're not getting these indie titles. And now that the PlayStation is getting a ton of indie titles, oh, it's the Indie Station. Fuck you. One less than Sony at E3. Oh, and Microsoft's exclusive count for the Xbox One, 14 games. 4 less than Sony. On to Nintendo. This is the one that's going to surprise everybody. Nintendo showed 51 total games. More than Microsoft, less than Sony. 26 of those were indie titles. 2 more indie titles than Sony showed. It's true. It's true. 22 of the total games shown were exclusive Nintendo games, and 17 of those were exclusives for the Wii U. They showed more exclusives for the Wii U than the Xbox One. Sony only beat them in exclusives by 1 title. And you know what that 1 title was? It was No Man's Sky, which is a timed exclusive. It's a timed console exclusive. The developers have said that it will eventually, possibly, make it to Xbox One, but they haven't given a firm date on that. As of right now, the PS4 is the only system it's coming out for. So for right now, Sony won out by 1 title. If it wasn't for that, the 2 of them would be tied for first place. As it stands, Sony barely squeaked by Nintendo, and I mean barely. Nintendo is in a nice, comfortable second place spot, with Microsoft picking up third place with their 14 exclusives. Now, yes, it is a bit unfair that Sony has 3 platforms to draw from, which is PS4, PS3, and the Vita. Nintendo has 2 platforms to draw from, which is the 3DS and the Wii U, and Microsoft only had the 1, because everything that they were showing for the Xbox 360 were multi-plats that were coming out for the Xbox One too, so that didn't help them any. Now, if you went strictly by the press conferences, Nintendo would have been deeply in third place, because most of what they showed was in their Treehouse stuff over the course of the next 3 days after E3 press conferences came out. If you just went by the press conferences, they didn't show shit, really, in their main video, aside from Splatoon and the new Zelda game coming out. Most of the good exclusive shit they showed was over the next several days. So I had to go through all of that and find all of the stuff that they promoted. So if I had only gone by the conferences and what was shown strictly in the conferences, Sony would have showed more games overall, but only 13 exclusives. So they would have tied for first with Nintendo picking up second. But you can't do that because of the way Nintendo does their stuff. So I had to treat Microsoft and Sony the same way that I treated Nintendo, which was I had to go through all of their trailers in addition to what they showed in the press conference and tally it all up together in one big sum. And when you do that, Sony squeaks by with first, Nintendo close second, practically tied, and Microsoft bringing up the rear. Now that that's established, let's talk about what actually interested me. I'm really interested in the PlayStation Now. It's a good price. I don't really need any of the video streaming stuff because I already have all of that. Upstairs I've got an Amazon Fire TV. Down here I've got the PS4, the PS3, the Xbox One. All of those do the streaming services that I need. My interest in the PlayStation TV is being able to play my Vita games on my TV, and in turn being able to capture footage of Vita games so that I can review them. I can't do that right now unless I'm holding the Vita up to the camera. This is why you've never seen a Vita game review from me. It's not because I don't have any games that I like for it. I don't have the tech to pull it off without it looking like shit. Because the only other option right now is you gotta buy a modified Vita that's hooked into this base that you can then output. They're like $400 on the internet. It's just not worth it to me. This is a much cheaper solution. This I'll be able to do Vita reviews with. So yay for the PlayStation TV. I'm excited about that. But that's the only reason why. PlayStation Now, I told you guys that the pricing on that was going to suck when it first came out. I'm not interested in it unless I can pay a flat subscription rate. And now I will say this, I don't think people should be all that shocked or angered by the pricing that they do have. And the reason why people shouldn't be all that upset about that price range is if you are like me and you lived through the 80s of the arcade era, it wasn't that uncommon for us to leave the movie theater, walk across the mall, go into the Pot of Gold arcade, and stick $1 in an arcade machine to play a game for 15 minutes. That's $4 for an hour of play. That's $16 for 4 hours of play. And that is before inflation. In the days of the arcade, technically speaking, we were paying more to play those games than what you'd be paying to rent a game for the PS3 for 4 hours. Just saying. Not saying that I agree with it, but I'm just saying it ain't that expensive compared to what we've paid in the past. Be that as it may, I don't give a shit about it unless they have a subscription rate and unless you can earn trophies on those games. If they don't have the trophies enabled on it and you're just playing the game, don't give a shit. Because I remember that Sony filed a patent a while back that would add trophies to games that didn't have trophies before, and it mentioned previous platforms like PS2, PS1. If that's part of PlayStation Now and they open up a subscription rate and it's not over $30 a month, I'll get it. If it's over $29.99 a month and it's got some kind of restriction on how many games you can play during the month and there's no trophies in it, fuck it, I ain't gonna get it. It ain't worth it to me. It's true, this is where everything is heading eventually. That's where all of them are heading. Microsoft tried to force it down everybody's throats. Sony is doing it as an optional service. But still, it all leads to the same eventual thing. No more physical media. And I've been telling you guys that for years. This is where everything is eventually heading. But these companies, Sony included, want a nickel and dime over it instead of just offering it at a flat rate. But it's not all their fault. A lot of that's coming from the publishers. Just saying. So what games excited me? We'll start with Microsoft first. I liked the footage of Project Spark. I thought it was kind of cool that they threw Conker in there. Still, I would prefer Conker to have his own individual separate release. I feel that they're throwing him in there to get retro gamers just to buy Project Spark. It does look like something that you could do a lot more with than, say, Little Big Planet. However, that all depends on how easy the interface is. If it's a whole lot of work to put a game together, there's going to be a select few who dive into it head first and just immerse themselves in it, and then you're going to have people that are just uploading garbage or uploading, Super Mario Brothers levels and stuff like that, just like they did on Little Big Planet. So I think you're going to have a situation there where there'll be a lot of real gems that people have put a lot of work in that are really fun, buried in a mountain of crap. Fable Legends, I'm done with Fable. Fable Legends has killed Fable for me even more than the Fable Journey for the Kinect did. Fable Legends does... Everything that I've seen about it screams MOBA to me. And I'm just not into MOBA games. The whole multiplayer online battle arena shit, you're just running across the screen and killing stuff. And yeah, you get to play as the mastermind, the dungeon master, where you're laying all your enemies out and whatnot. But if all it is just what we saw, that's a MOBA, and I don't give a shit about it. If it has actual quests that involve more than just running through an arena killing each other, then I'll be interested in it. If it has an actual storyline, the things that make an RPG an RPG. If it has those, I'll be interested in it. But as of right now, Fable Legends looks like a downloadable MOBA title. And I don't give a rat fuck about that. For Forza Horizons 2, I don't give a shit about it either. I've been seeing a lot of crap about how Drive Club stole weather from Forza Horizons 2. Well, first of all, they wouldn't have had enough time to just throw that into a patch and say the next day, hey, we're patching weather in. They announced that they were putting weather in the game last year before Forza Horizons 2 had even been hinted at. So don't give me that shit, Xbox. Second of all, if anything, they kind of, unless Forza Horizons 1, which I still haven't played, had a club system, then, they stole that from Drive Club because it was announced in Drive Club first. I don't really give a shit about the Halo Master Chief collection because I already have all of them. I might buy it again to farm achievements on Xbox One, but that'd be the only reason I'd buy it, because I don't play the multiplayer. So all these multiplayer maps, that doesn't mean shit to me. Halo 5, don't really give a shit about it either. Sunset Overdrive looks like a game that would be fun for the first hour, and then you'd lose interest in it. It looks like a rental title. They basically took concepts from their own games and games from other developers and mixed them all into a mishmash. They already admitted that they borrowed from Jet Grind Radio and Tony Hawk Pro Skater, that was two of their influences. But they also borrowed from the Ratchet and Clank series, their own series. They borrowed from Sly Cooper, and in turn, because they borrowed from Sly Cooper, they also borrowed from the Infamous series with the, power line gliding and hanging from hooks and all that. All of that came out of Sly Cooper and Infamous. So it's a mishmash. It doesn't feel like it has its own style. If it's one of those games where it feels like it's trying too hard to be a hip, cool game, where they're putting in so much of jargon and teenage angst and all this shit that it feels like they're shoving it down your throat. Like the nerdy kid that comes walking into the high school and he's bought himself a pair of Airwalks and a Tony Hawk shirt, but he still has the 4 eyes and the pimple face, and he still has a book bag full of Heinlein novels. But he's trying to force that coolness on you. That's what Sunset Overdrive is. I liked the new clip of The Order that gave it more of a survival horror feel. I've seen other people in the community talking about how they're afraid that there won't be enough gameplay in it or whatnot, that it's going to be like Beyond Two Souls. Did you guys only watch the clip on the press conference, or did you watch all the other dozens of clips of The Order that came out for E3 that showed basically that it's Gears of War with, QuickTime events. That's basically the gameplay. It's Gears of War with QuickTime events and some cinematic events thrown in, like running away from the werewolf. It's not scripted shit. So, the guys that were posting videos like that, it's just more clickbait. Bloodborne looks really interesting. One thing that I could say about Demon's Souls was that it was very bland. It's a fun game if you like that kind of roguelike, frustrating RPG style, but it didn't have any real identity. Everything had a generic medieval look to it. But Bloodborne has a more unique character to it. And of course that comes from the fact that you're playing with an established character instead of designing your own. But I just liked the whole look of it better than Demon's Souls. If it's still hard as hell like Demon's Souls, fine. But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see more. Suda51's game, Let It Die. It's an interesting mechanic. Basically, if all you've seen is the trailer and you haven't read up on how the game works, I don't know if it's multiplayer only or not. Here's the gist of how it works. Let's say that I'm playing Let It Die, and a monster kills me. I'm dead. Somewhere else out in the internet ether, someone else will be playing the game. And it could be someone on my friends list, could be someone who doesn't know who the fuck I am. And they'll see a zombie come shuffling up to them that says the 7th level over its head. And when you die in the game, it turns you into a zombie to attack somebody else. That's the big hook with Let It Die. It's an interesting idea. I like that idea. But is the gameplay there? Is the storyline there? Suda51 is not exactly known for making classics. He's known for making quirky, weird, interesting stuff that plays like shit. I mean, when Lollipop Chainsaw is the best playing game you've released, there's something up. So I'm curious about that one, but I'm not calling it a win at this point. Little Big Planet 3. My kid will love it. I'm not all that interested in it. They can add new characters, they can add new depth, and they can, expand on the formula all they want. It's still the same thing that I've played in the last 2 games when it gets right down to it. It's still got that same floaty platforming where you don't have accurate jumping, which I don't really care for that style of platformer. And so I'm not all that hot on Little Big Planet 3. I'm more curious to see what Media Molecule is working on, because Media Molecule is not making Little Big Planet 3. It's being made by the company that did Little Big Planet for the Vita, which is a perfectly good Little Big Planet game. It's just not my thing. It's more my kids' thing. Alright, some quick words about Nintendo. Alright, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Can we now, Nintendo fanboys, admit to the fact that this game does not look next gen? Can we now? I mean, you've seen the PS3 level anime character animations. You've seen how blocky the environments are, how there's jaggies and pointed edges to everywhere. How it doesn't have the shading and normal mapping that current gen games have, that it's just going to be it's basically going to be what Xenoblade Saga on the Wii would have looked like if it had come out for the PS3, but with bigger environments and more enemies on screen at one time. Can we finally admit to that? Can you guys finally say, okay, now that we've seen the actual game running, we can admit to the fact that it looks like a game from last gen? It's still going to be fun as hell and will probably be one of the best RPGs of this generation, but graphically speaking, it looks like a PS3 game. Can you finally admit that now? Now that they're showing real gameplay and they're not just showing cutscenes. For real. I don't give a fuck about Yoshi's Woolly World. I didn't give a fuck about Kirby's Epic Yarn. I bought it because it was an exclusive. Yeah, any game where it's impossible to die. I mean, if it's anything like Kirby was. I mean, Kirby, you could not die in that game. It was made for little kids, and that's what this one looks like. And the same thing with the the new Kirby's Rainbow Adventure or whatever the fuck it's called, where everything looks like it's made out of Play-Doh. You know, what's the deal? I know Little Big Planet does it too, where everything looks like it was pieced together with arts and crafts, but why can't we just have a really good sprite animated Kirby title, or a really good sprite animated Yoshi title? The last good Kirby game was Return to Dreamland on the Wii, and now they've gone back to this, you know, it looks like that game that was released for the DS that was a Kirby game where you had to draw the little lines and shit. What's the point? And then, you know, they have, they're re-releasing Mario vs. Donkey Kong for the Wii U. Why? I mean, it was an okay game for the handhelds when it came out years and years ago, but I don't think it deserves a console re-release. Maybe isn't. Hopefully that's an eShop title. I didn't bother to look when I was watching the trailer for it, but I'm hoping that's an eShop title and it's not a retail release, because if it is, damn. I'm glad that they showed some clips from a new Star Fox. You know, there needed to be a new Star Fox, but why no new Metroid? You know, it was mentioned that a new Metroid was in the works, but why not show something of it? If anything, this E3 should impress to Nintendo fans the importance of having third-party support. See, I didn't come up in the GameCube era or the N64 era. I came up in the NES era. Well, actually, before even that, but my real strong interest in gaming started with the NES era, like some other people of my age. And you guys, either you are of my age and you're looking back on Nintendo with rose-tinted glasses, or you're not of my age and you weren't around to know what it was like to be a Nintendo enthusiast back then. Yes, you had your Marios. Yes, you had your Zelda. Yes, you had your Metroid. But for every one of those, there was 3 Castlevanias, 3 Contras, 3 Bionic Commandos, 3 Ninja Gaiden. The reason that the real reason that Nintendo back then was so awesome was because third-party games were only coming out on the NES. They had this exclusivity deal where if you made it on their system, you couldn't make it anywhere else. Or if you made it anywhere else, it wasn't coming to their system. And so rather than take a risk and make a third-party game for the Master System, all the third-party games just got made on the NES. So you had this plethora of games. You know, you ask someone that grew up in that era what they remember most about being a Nintendo fan, yeah, they're going to say Mario and Zelda and all this, but they're also going to say DuckTales, and they're going to say Mega Man, and they're going to say Bionic Commando, and Contra, and Ninja Gaiden, all these other great third-party titles. Wii U doesn't have this, and that's why we complain. They can make all the great first-party games they want. It ain't going to be enough to make it like it was with the NES. So they eked out second place, almost got first. I am man enough to admit that if it wasn't for that one game, Nintendo would be tied for first. That's the way it is. Microsoft guys, sorry, you sucked it for another E3. This is 7th.